the panelists are actually going to make their closing arguments, and they're going to talk about why their particular political party and their candidate are the best party to vote for. But we're not just going to make this a partisan thing, right? We're also going to, along the way, talk about issues where the two parties can kind of come together, because once the election is over, the Hindus would like to know how the panels, how both the parties are going to come together to solve the issues that are important to Hindus. So with that in mind, we said that we'll make this not a debate as much as a discussion. So we are sitting around a table, a virtual table, of course, and we're going to talk about issues that are important to Hindus. Of course, we'll not have convergence on every issue, and that is what. So there is an element of debate there, but there's also an element of discussion and finding common grounds and convergence. So that is our goal. But as with all the debates, a lot of these things are unpredictable, and that's what makes it fun, right? So with that, namaste and welcome to everyone. I am going to let me go over some of the if you will, ground rules and introductions. So basically, we're going to talk about the issues from American Hindu perspective. And a lot of times people come to us and say, well, you can talk about the Indian American issues. No, we're not going to talk about Indian American issues, but because there are a lot of Indians who are not Hindus, and there are a lot of Hindus who are not Indians. And so we talk about Hindu issues and the global Hindu issues, regardless of the race, ethnicities, etc. We just, for this particular, that's what makes this particular debate or this particular discussion somewhat unique, because there are a lot of debates about Indian American views and Indian American surveys, but this is from the Hindu perspective. We will talk about India, of course, but it is more from the perspective of India being our Dharma Bhumi, and to that extent. So, for example, we'll not talk about the issues like trade, because issues like trade are not, not important. They're important, but they're important at a different level. For this particular hour, because we have only an hour, we'll talk about issues that are really, critical for Hindu Americans. We don't have specific issues related to personality or moral values of the candidates and all that, because I think that the questions that we are going to that I'm going to pose, it is much better if you blend the answer. If you want to make a point about your candidate's moral values or candidate's personality and other things, then just blend it into the answers that you're giving, so that if people get the context of why a particular particular trait in the candidate is important or not important related to that question. And then of course you have the opening arguments, closing arguments, where you can where you can talk about the personality of the candidates and the other moral traits and all the other things. And finally, some of the other basic rules, right? So just so that our viewers everywhere know that the questions have not been shared with people earlier. There are three parts. One is the party stance, the domestic issues, and the international issues. But I understand that none of you are really the official party spokespeople, but you guys are all passionate about the candidates you have, and you're passionate about the stand your party has taken. So with that in mind, the questions may be a lot more a lot more unpredictable in this particular case, because you may have not given a lot of thought to it. But from a Hindu perspective, we have given it a lot of thought. And just give us your view, because at the end of the day, you guys have at least some influence over the people who are going to get elected. So we are hoping that you will advocate for those issues one way or the other based on your stand. The timing, I'm going to time everyone. I hope that everyone respects the time, so that everyone has time to participate equally. And finally, with the panel of this caliber, I don't need to say that we are going to, please, respect all the other participants. I think we had good success in the previous debate that we did, and I'm hoping that that continues in this debate. With that, I can talk a lot about the candidate, about the panelists, but I just want to kind of briefly introduce. So Dr. Suresh Kumar, and among all the other achievements, the most important for this one is that he's the co-founder for Indian Americans for Biden-Harris. Dr. Manisha Sinha, she's the Draper Chair in American History at the University of Connecticut. Jay Kansara, who's a frequent on Steve Bannon's show, very passionate in terms of how he articulates the issues and all that. He's a former director of government relations for the Hindu American Federation. And then last but not least, Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsav is very active in all the Hindu activities in the DC area, and he's also the executive director of Hindu Pact. And I must say that in this particular discussion, he is not representing Hindu Pact, he is representing himself. With that, the overall agenda is, starts with 2 minutes of just, each for opening remarks. And Sureshji, I will start with you if you don't mind for your introduction.
Certainly. I think I will skip introducing myself and I'll just talk in terms of what is at stake from a Hindu perspective. So, and I'm going to draw a little bit from one of my mentors, a Vedic scholar by the name of Dr. Srinu Srinivasan, who was introduced by our common friend, Gaurang Vaishnav, just a few weeks ago. So what he says, and I tend to agree with him completely, is that all our decisions, including political decisions because of its impact, has to be guided by our values. So the question becomes, what are the at least some of the governing values of the Hindu community? So the first thing is that may all people be happy is, I think, the most fundamental. And if you look at it, I would like to point out that Trump has been dividing people based on either on race or gender or sexual preferences, etc. Joe Biden has made it very clear almost in every talk that he will be the president for all people. So I think that's very important. The second point is regarding the fact that democracy is central to Hinduism, right? And so the whole concept of Panchayat Raj and Tarka or Tarkam, which means accepting each different points of view, is also central to Hinduism. But Trump has been ruling like a dictator where only his views matter. If you oppose it, then it has no validity. In fact, he's driven people out just because of that. One final point I would like to make is regarding the Hindu document Manu Shastra, Manu Dharma Shastra, also called, where it says very clearly that it is the duty of the king to uphold the law. Now, the closest we have to a king is, let's say, the president or prime minister. And upholding the law is the last thing that Trump has done. In fact, he systematically destroyed the institutions of democracy in America. And I don't have to go into the details. There are so many, but just the fact that he's been impeached is evidence. Yeah, only the third president to be impeached is evidence of this. So character is central, and that is something Trump has failed in. On the other hand, Biden has a
your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, thank you. And the next up is Jay. Jay, please, 2 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you to the organizers of today's panel discussion, and namaste to everyone. Yes, we are 2 days before the most consequential election of the United States history. And in fact, it's probably the most consequential election on the global stage today. And the reason why it's consequential is because we are dealing with forces that have been embedded within the left that are antithetical to the founding principles of America, of American democracy, or the republic as it stands. And also President Trump is the only major figure who can work to dismantle these very egregious forces and their impact on the democratic institutions and civil society. And that is critical for Hindus living in the United States, because we have unfortunately been at the receiving end of much of these left illiberal. I hate to use the word liberal and left interchangeably, because frankly, the left has become the most illiberal force in political discourse today. But we have been at the receiving end of much of their bigotry of their caricaturization of our community and our values and our history and heritage. And we also stand to lose considerable gain that that my parents' generation and my generation, we have worked very hard to instill values in our generation. My parents worked very hard to instill these values of truthfulness, of hard work, of discipline, vivek, aparigraha, and other Hindu principles into us. And if the left were to take,
Thank you, Jay.
thank you.
Right. Manisha ji.
So thank you for having me and for hosting us. I am speaking to you today as a Hindu American and also somebody who is very conversant with American history. And there is no greater threat to American and Indian values than Trump and the Republican Party. I remember when I first came to this country and researched my dissertation, the Republican Party in South Carolina characterized Hinduism as devil worship. It is a party of white supremacy, intolerant party, and it has come to an apex under Trump. Instead, I evoke the tradition of Hinduism, of tolerance, of love to everyone. They are disrespectful to us. They are disrespectful to our religion. I think if you are a Hindu, you should not, in fact, be anywhere near Trump. The person who actually best exemplified that was President Obama in his address to the Indian Parliament, where he showed great appreciation for India's ancient Hindu civilization. Trump cannot even string a sentence together, leave alone even say namaste properly. I will say again that there has been a lot of overlap between Indian Americans and African American struggle for freedom, going back to Swami Vivekananda, to Lala Lajpat Rai, to all our great nationalist leaders who have come to this country and have identified with our struggle against imperialism and the Black struggle for equality. Kamala Harris actually represents that beautifully. She represents the highest values of tolerance. She went as a young girl to Hindu temples and she went to churches. That's what Hinduism is all about. It is about tolerance and love. The reason why India was chosen by Jews, by Parsis fleeing religious persecution. We cannot buy the lies of white supremacists like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller, and who are anti-immigrant and, believe me, are no friends of Hindu or Indian Americans.
Thank you. So the first question, and we determined the order earlier, and so the format now is going to be, we are talking about the parties.
Himself. What's up?
Oh, I'm sorry, Utsav. I see Utsav every day and I forget Utsav. So that's familiarity does that, right? So go ahead, Utsav. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to charge an extra minute for you ignoring me.
Why not?
I see something very engaging happening here, and I hear rhetoric and I hear tokenism, which is the namastes and the picture of Kamala Harris on the face of Devi Durga, which comes from the Democratic side, and I acknowledge it. I think they are very good at that. But more conclusively and more importantly, let us look at the Hindu community globally and the Hindu community in America. We can pretty much divide every Hindu in the world into 5 different categories: American-born Hindu, immigrant Hindus who are citizens and green card holders, immigrant Hindus waiting for their green cards, immigrant Hindus who want to have H-1 visas, and Hindus in India and other parts of the world. Irrespective of what campaigning talking points and rhetorics you are going to hear for the rest of the hour from each political party, I can tell you this much, and I'm going to analyze into it in detail during the question answers. The fact remains that other than category 4, which is the immigrant Hindu who wants to have a H-1 visa, every other category, which is about 90% of the Hindus in America and 99% of the Hindus globally, every other category benefits under a Trump presidency more than under a Biden-Harris team in the White House. And during the question answers, I will go into each category: the American-born Hindu, the immigrant Hindu who's on green card or citizen, every other category, and the Hindus all around the world benefit far more under Trump. The rest is rhetoric. We'll get into it.
Thank you, Utsul. So let me start with the first question. And so, as per the order that I determined earlier, the first question actually goes to you. So there you are 2 more minutes. So the question I have is, what is, and this is what the party stance, okay? So what is your party stand on California Proposition 16, which is related to affirmative action in admissions and jobs and other things? Especially because it, at least from the California perspective, it impacts Hindus a great deal because a lot of it is, a lot of the non-preferential admission criteria, etc. Asian American students take benefit of because they're not being, they're not being categorized into some quota or the other. So, what is your party stand on California Prop 16?
So the California Prop 16 is a very indicative, very symbolic issue that you brought up, where American Hindus are going to be disproportionately harmed because of extreme left ideological roots that have grown so significantly in the Democratic Party. And Kamala Harris, who, by the way, herself claims that she's a Baptist Christian, and I think we are clutching at straws when we try to portray her as a Hindu because she has visited some temples when she was young and she had called somebody akka or auntie in Tamil. That shows the level of tokenism that we have reduced ourselves to. But coming back to the Proposition 16 topic, this is exactly what the Democratic Party's problem is. They are overwhelmingly embracing extreme left ideologies that reward identity politics to such an extreme that Hindu kids in California will find it extremely difficult to get into state colleges. And this has been repeated in other parts of the country. This is going to be repeated in other parts of the country as well. And the Trump administration actually filed a lawsuit against Yale University on this issue. So here we go. We as Republicans, we are totally against bringing race as a factor that defines qualification in such unqualified, non-merit-based fashion. And therefore, I think the Democrats have taken that issue to a point where Hindu Americans are unsustainable in this country, especially in California, when it comes to their kids' education.
Thank you. So thanks for staying within your time too. So this is open for either of the Democratic panelists and whoever wants to take up. And since Utsav has yielded another 30 seconds, so you get a minute and a half.
Manisha, I'll let Dr. Manisha Sinha, because she
Yes.
actually specializes in that area.
I will. I'm happy to. It'll come news to most Indian Americans, certainly most Hindu Americans, that they are somehow being discriminated against in the United States, given our fabulous success in this country, having the largest educational achievements, wealth acquirement, etc. And I'm very happy and proud of young Indian Americans who will never buy into such rubbish and divisive tactics as being espoused to pit one community against another. I mean, I am shocked to hear that you would even divide us Hindus. We should be united to use our force into different categories. One who wants visas, 5, 6, maybe 100 different categories. No, the strength of Hinduism lies in our unity, in our common values. Talking about Kamala Harris, it is highly ridiculous to talk about the way her face was superimposed on Durgaji's picture, considering that the Republican Party desecrated the image of Ganeshji as their elephant symbol. How dare they? The Republican Party is full of token Indian Americans who've actually converted to Christianity. Kamala Harris actually respects all religions. She does not need to change her name, anglicize her name, or have her name mocked as Kamala la 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 la. I mean, I am shocked that any self-respecting Hindu, Indian American can even belong to the party of Trump. It is you think of the man who was actually pushed and died in Georgia, an Indian grandfather. So the things that affect African Americans affect us. Let us not pit each other against each other.
Thank you, Manisha ji. I give 15 seconds to Utsav to close it out, and then we go to the next question.
I think the biggest difference is that American Hindus who support Trump stand up for Hindu Dharma, even if that means that they have to speak up against their party. but American Hindus who support Democrats play cover fire for them, just like Manisha ji just did, in which case she completely refused to acknowledge the part that Kamala Harris is a Christian, and she actually acknowledges that, but she continues to refer to her as being Hindu. So that here's the difference between the two.
I did not. I said she
Move on to the
respected
next
both
question.
religions. Sorry, I need to respond. I did not say that she's a Christian. You said that. I said she respects both religions. She did not convert the way Bobby Jindal and Nikki Haley did.
Well, Kamala Harris acknowledged she's a Christian.
I think give plenty of time.
Herself talks about it.
There are other questions coming up. So the next question actually is for you, Manisha ji. The question I have for you is, there are all the anti-CAA city council resolutions that are going on. There are 6 of them now that have passed, ranging from Seattle all the way to Cambridge and St. Paul, Minnesota, and others. And a question I have for you is, what is the Democratic Party stance, if there is one, on the anti-CAA resolutions, because that does impact the Hindus in America?
Well, I will say for one that the Democratic Party has always been the greatest supporter of Indian interests all over the world. As far as local propositions are passed, there are hundreds of propositions passed on the Palestinian question, for instance, regarding Israel. The Democratic Party's national foreign policy is the best for India because we need a functional and strong United States government to defend India from Chinese encroachment. We cannot have a dysfunctional government headed by a kleptocrat, a criminally incompetent kleptocrat who owes money to the Chinese government to actually do anything of substance. If you look at the record of the Democratic Party, you look at the Biden administration, they came up with the idea of encircling China and having a close relationship with India. President Obama visited India twice. He is the only American president to have done so, and did so, and in fact, invited Prime Minister Modi back to the United States. He is the first one to do that. So you must keep in mind that this disinformation coming out and about Hindu Dharma, don't even take the name of our sacred religion in your mouth if you are an intolerant person, because that is not what Hinduism is all about. That is not my Dharma. My Dharma is the ancient Vedic texts of tolerance. Mine is a way of life. Mine is an ancient civilization. Do not politicize my religion and use it and weaponize it, especially when you have no respect for the values that Hinduism presents. I, as a Hindu, am awfully offended about it. I remember when the Republican Dan Burton of Indiana, pro-Pakistan, always anti-India. I remember the 1971 war when they supported Pakistan over India. It is the Democratic Party that recognizes the great underlying values of democracy between India and the US.
Okay. So 1 minute to either one of you who's representing the Republican side to counter that. Jay, you are on mute.
But so since you were targeted by Manisha ji, I think it's best if you respond.
So you're on mute as well.
Again, so here's the problem. We go back to 1971 to have to refer to what the Republicans did wrong. I can go back just last 10 years and I can show you 100 things that the Democrats did wrong. I can go back a week and I can show you 100 things that the Democrats did. I agree with Manisha ji that Hindu Dharma is sacred and nobody who has divisive hatred, policies, and thoughts in their mind should ever use it. And that is why I think the 6 city councils that literally deracinated the Hindu community directly, all coming from Democrats, just the last couple of months ago, shows that we know which side is actually going after the Hindu community. It takes very little research online in the social media to actually see who, as I speak right now, is targeting the Hindu community in America, which party is doing that. You see, go and look into Ro Khanna, a very senior congressman from California, what he wrote just 2 days ago. So, I would urge all the audience here to look into both parties at this point of time. Let's not go back 50 years. I can go back 30 years. I can go and talk about how Pakistan gave its highest civilian award to the presidential candidate Biden for giving it money, which essentially they used to target India and Afghanistan for terrorism. Biden is the only candidate, the only person who received Pakistan's highest civilian award. So let's not go back too long ago. Okay, and speaking of Democrats.
Excuse me, I need to respond to that.
Okay, I'll give 15 seconds to both one more time to close it out. So 15 seconds to you, Manisha ji, and then 15 to Utsav.
Thank you. I really don't like the idea of him always coming after me, but that's fine. I'll take that because it's so much disinformation. Dan Burton was in the Congress right through the 1980s and 90s. You may not know that, but he was very much there. The Republican Party is an intolerant party. It's a party of Christian fundamentalists. And that's what distinguishes us from the Republican Party. The Hindu Party is actually a party of tolerance. Hinduism is a religion of tolerance. That's what distinguishes us from the Republican Party. These scare tactics of the left and the socialists have always been there, but that's not the Democratic Party. In fact, Joe Biden is a big supporter of India.
Thank you, Manisha ji. It's 15 seconds to close out.
I agree with Manisha ji. The Democratic Party is so tolerant that in the Diwali they hosted in the White House in 2012, they actually invited an Islamic organization called ISNA, which is openly supporting jihadists in Kashmir, one of the groups which is banned all across the world, Hizbul Mujahideen. They were speakers at the Diwali event in the White House during the Obama administration. I agree with Manisha ji. They really are a party of tolerant people.
Thank you. Got to move on. Thank you, Utsav. So my next question is for Suresh ji. So Suresh ji, the question I have is related to state of California again. The state of California, as you know, is suing Cisco for caste discrimination. And this is one of the evolving trends because Brandeis has also explicitly targeted Hindus for caste discrimination. And they've not mentioned that caste actually exists across religious spectrum in India. But they specifically targeted Hindus, and now the Cisco has been sued for caste discrimination, and other places are now taking up this issue. So, what is the Democratic Party stand on the caste discrimination being codified in the law and taken up by various state agencies targeting specifically Hindus?
So, Ajay-ji, I'll be honest, my knowledge on this topic is rather limited, but can I make one quick point, use my time to make a quick point just to...
So maybe Manisha ji can answer on your behalf because this issue is of importance to India, and then whatever remaining time you have, please use it for whatever other things you want to use it.
That's a really interesting question that you've posed because I have not heard any law against caste discrimination in the United States. And if it is a matter, it is a matter within our Hindu community. It's not for any outsider to tell us what discriminations exist within us. If someone is feeling caste discriminated within a community, they are Hindu Americans. Who they are fighting against are Hindu Americans. The Democratic Party does not have any big stance on this. We as Hindus should not be against any divisive agenda that pits one caste against another, one kind of Hindu against another kind of Hindu. Our strength lies in our unity as Hindus and projecting our religion outwards. I also should point out that this I could not answer your question on Proposition 16, so I will take this opportunity to do so. It is shocking to me that most Indian Americans would be against that when we are here because of the 1965 immigration law, which came out as a result of the civil rights movement. You are here because of the struggles of Black people in this country. And to actually now want to deny them access to opportunity is rather shocking.
Okay, Suresh, you have 45 seconds if you want to make another point before I ask someone from the Republican side to counter the first one.
Certainly. So I just wanted to counter the point that Utsav was making with regard to Ro Khanna. Firstly, Ro Khanna was backing, as you know, a different candidate who's not the majority choice of the party, right? So to say that he's an influential experience is what he's, I think, 2 or 3 terms, that's it. I'm not, but the important thing I think to be noted here is that he also has a place in the Democratic tent. That is tolerance, right? And can you have one example of this in the Trump cabinet? or even the Republican Party. If you say anything or if you think differently from Trump, you have no role there. So we are a genuine party that kind of reflects the Hindu values of
Thank you,
tolerance,
Soji.
acceptance.
Soji, thank you. I would like one of the Republican representatives to actually talk about the caste issue that I brought up before we forget that was the real question. So please go ahead. Any one of you.
So,
Go ahead, Jay.
Go, Jay.
so thank you so much. There's an organization called Equality Labs that has been funded by the George Soros and Omidyar networks that is actually pushing these types of divisive agendas against the Hindu community. And these voices have been given far more credence in the Democratic Party and amongst Democratic leaders such as Ro Khanna, and I would also extend that to Pramila Jayapal of Seattle, Washington, and others. And there's a gentleman by the name of Peter Friedrich, who is one of the most Hindu-phobic commentators on Twitter and social media, who has actually stated that he respects 5 Indian Americans who actually, at least 4 of them identify as Hindu. One of them is Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Ram Vili Vallam, who's a state senator in Illinois. But the 5th person that he respects
Thank you, Jay.
is Shama Sawant, who is a Maoist, Marxist, socialist, communist, actually, city councilwoman of Seattle, who is actually the catalyst of the anti-India resolution in their city council. And not only that, she led rioters to ransack City Hall, and she actually allowed them to also set up camp in the Chaz, the capital autonomous zone. So she's actually
With Joe Biden, though.
Actually, this is a perfect segue. Let me ask the next question. This is actually to Jay. And Jay, you kind of stole the question. So and you'll all have a chance to comment on it. So I'm just going to merge the two. Okay. So the next question I had was that maybe this is where we'll find convergence between the parties. So the question I have is that Hindu candidates, regardless of their political affiliation, are being targeted for attending Hindu events. And it's mostly a political hit job. I don't know how many people saw an article that came out in Politico yesterday by Sonia Paul. And she actually targeted people who attended the VHPA events or HSS events or went to Howdy Modi event and things like that, right? And Peter Friedrich, as Jay mentioned a little earlier, recently targeted Padma Kupa, a Democrat. He's targeting Sri Preston Kulkarni, a Democrat. And is this an issue, Jay, where Democrats and Republicans can find convergence by speaking up against these kinds of activities coming from their own parties? And I don't know if, I think that if you actually look back, I mean, someone like Peter Friedrich is, claims to be not affiliated with any party. So maybe this is an area of convergence. What do you think?
Absolutely, it must be an area of convergence, and of course there is a candidate on the Republican side who has stood up to both political parties targeting of Hindu candidates. One is, and that person is Nisha Sharma, who is based in California, and she has stood up against Peter Friedrich, who is targeting Hindu Republicans and Democrats, and she's also even been so bold as to counter Alan West, who is the Texas Republican Party's chairperson, after he made Hindu-phobic remarks against Sri Preston Kulkarni, because the same Islamists and Marxists that are targeting Hindus from both sides of the aisle, or from that are embedded in either party or whatever, they will target patriotic, freedom-loving Americans on either side of the party. And let me be clear, Hindus belong to no party just by the virtue of their being Hindu. The arguments that Utsav and I are making on behalf of President Trump is because we believe his policies have actually benefited Hindus both in the United States and abroad. That doesn't mean to say that Hindus in the Democratic Party are in any way, shape, or form evil, but they simply are blind to the misinformation and the bias and bigotry within their own party. And I would like to extend this, conversation to more international events. Just recently, Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party was excommunicated from his own party. He's supposedly the minority whip in the UK Parliament, but he's been excommunicated because of anti-Semitic comments. I would hope that the Democratic Party can also excommunicate people within their own ranks who are making vile comments against Hindus.
Thank you, Jay.
And I think that's the reform that's required within the Democratic Party to move forward.
Thank you. So anyone from the Democratic side, please, if you can comment on the Sonia Paul, Peter Friedrich, hit jobs on Hindu candidates from across the spectrum, including the Democratic candidates like Sri Preston Kulkarni and Padma Kupa, both Democrats actually. So what are your views on that?
So I think it is rather pathetic to look at random articles being published by random people to attack the Democratic Party on its stance on Hinduism, because that is not there. Raja Krishnamurthy, who is a Democrat, a Hindu from Illinois, actually attended the event for Prime Minister Modi. We also know that the BJP has taken out an official statement saying that they're not endorsing any candidate in this election in the United States. They quite clearly see that a Biden regime would actually be much better for India to have a strong, functioning American government. I also think it's important for Hindu Americans not to suffer from an inferiority complex, to always think we are being attacked. No, India is an emerging part today. Hinduism is a growing, a large religion all over the world. To think that you can be attacked by some random article written by somebody or by some silly little city council resolution is a sign of a real inferiority complex. We Hindus don't need to be like that. We are a powerful group. We are proud of our ancient culture, our heritage, our civilization that respects women, respects other people. We are the Hinduism of Mahatma Gandhi, anti-casteism. We are the Hinduism of Swami Vivekananda, a powerful nation. Go read this stuff. Do not buy these sound bites by Trump, who know nothing about Hinduism. By Trump and his minions, the Republican Party today is, in my opinion, actually anti-everyone except Christian fundamentalism.
Thank you,
because of that, you're welcome to it.
Thank you. Utsav, either one of you, go Utsav. You.
I would just like to say that I'm sure that's why Richard Spencer, the most egregious white supremacist in America today, has endorsed Joe Biden for president.
Oh yeah, that was and sure, David Duke has endorsed Trump. And we have the KKK has endorsed Trump. And Richard Spencer is a lifelong Republican who's pulling the stunt now, and you know that. So to raise that is I guess it's a Bannon tactic.
So I wanted to just add to the response here. So I guess this is how we can have the cake and eat it too. So, when there is racism being called out, when there is anti-Hindu hatred being called out in the Democratic Party, it's either tolerance or some small city council doing it. And then we have to go back to the 1980s to call out the hatred of the Republican Party.
Thank you.
So I guess we hold both sides on equal terms. I will let the viewer decide who is actually doing what. And I just wanted to add one quick point, 5 seconds for Proposition 16 in California. Manisha ji misrepresented the fact that Black people are being given equal rights. Actually, before Proposition 16, all races, all ethnicities were being given equal rights by law in California. After Proposition 16, that is not going to happen.
I must answer that. If you think African Americans have the same opportunity as you immigrants who have come, as we immigrants have come with certain educational advantages and straight entry into professional occupations, you're absolutely wrong, because African Americans suffer hundreds of years of slavery and Jim Crow.
Yes, I have suffered hundreds of years of slavery in the Indian subcontinent
because of liberal immigration law. Your candidate immigrants only from Norway. He wants
not deride my personal history. My family has suffered as a refugee for the last 200 years. My family has
Trump is
sold as slaves in the markets of Baghdad and Bukhara for the last 700 years.
Good for refugees?
This is exactly the kind of self-deprecating approach that many of you
add the refugees
the Trump side.
So I don't want to go the mute route, but please, I'll give plenty of time. Please, one at a time is all I ask, because this is a really great discussion, and I appreciate you guys really bringing out the issues from your perspective, but just one at a time. So I'll just go to Jay. Jay, you wanted to add something?
Well, look, I mean, she clearly wants to look at history. I mean, the Democratic Party was the party of slavery, of Jim Crow laws, of repressive policies that kept Black Americans. And I would even say that Lyndon B. Johnson's policies towards Black Americans enabled the breakdown of their family structure. And in fact, President Trump is trying to remedy that. And I bring this up because it is important for Hindu Americans to know this, because actually the Hindu community in the 1960s and 70s, under the leadership of Srila Prabhupada of the Hare Krishna movement, actually remedied much of the damage that was done in inner cities today. And in fact, that's actually going to be celebrated later today. I think the audience should know that Kim Klacik, the Republican candidate for Maryland's 7th Congressional District, is actually going to be visiting the Hare Krishna Mandir in Baltimore to celebrate this today. I have not seen a single Democratic candidate acknowledge the importance of the Hindu mandirs within inner cities to rehabilitate.
Manisha, last 15 seconds before I move on to the next question.
All right, I would like to respond to that. Nearly 70% of Hindu Indian Americans are voting for Biden. They must be completely deluded if they don't know about these lovely little facts that are being put forward today. We must remember that Indian temples and Hinduism has been respected more by the Democratic Party. No, you must give me equal time to respond.
I am giving you equal time, actually.
Especially because there's so much misinformation coming out.
I understand, but the time is equal. In fact, it's going to another Democratic representative, so Sureshji. You'll get your chance, Manisha. I will not deprive you of your time. I'm tracking time, please. So, Sureshji, a question for you. And this question was asked in the previous debate also, and we thought that this would make a change. There would be a change in this, but there are web pages dedicated to just about every faith group in America on Vice President Biden's presidential campaign site, and they have not put up an issues page for Hindus, despite requests from just about every Hindu organization I know, on the political left, on the political right, on the political center. And we were told that, well, we have an Indian page. And we started this discussion saying that India is not the same as Hindu, and Hindu issues are not the same as Indian issues, because Hindus are a global community. So why is it that Biden campaign not agreeing to put up a web page on Hindu issues, as they have done for Muslims, Jews, all segments of Christians, all of that? Why not Hindus?
So my response to that would be that rather than looking at a web page, frankly, look at what the candidates' actions have been, both in the past, as well as what's going on now and what he's proposing for the future, right? And if you look at the Democratic Party in terms of who's been friendly to India, this goes back to JFK, right? Even when he was a senator, before he became president, after he became president in 1962, Indochina War, he actually helped with 6 mountain regiments of the Indian Army. And then if you again look further down, it was Bill Clinton and then, of course, Barack Obama, who's been continuing that. It was under Bush and Reagan that the pro-Pakistan, more or tactical approach of trying to support them, that started around then, right? So if you look at it, the track record is quite clear, and Biden has been front and center of this. And including as VP, even before that, with the Indian nuclear accord, etc. So I think we must look at the actions rather than words in a web page, because frankly, the web page is far removed from a candidate. And I don't think it reflects the views of the candidates. And we should not take that as what a candidate stands for.
Okay, thank you, Sureshji. Any counter from Republican side?
Yes. So I just want to make sure I wasn't muted. Absolutely. The party of JFK is no longer the Democratic Party of today. And in fact, it's far removed. In fact, JFK stood up to communists and leftists, but unfortunately, the Democratic Party of today has embraced them, if not been taken over by them. And the party of, I agree with Sureshji absolutely that JFK was one of the greatest presidents that we've had in America. And I would say on foreign policy, now President Trump is the next greatest president, if not even greater than JFK, because of his expansion of the Indo-Pacific strategy. And in fact, he's made it a far more Indo-centric Indo-Pacific strategy, whereas under the Biden-Obama administration, because of Biden's perhaps because of his son's dealings with China, made it a far more Sino-centric policy.
Thank you, Jane.
So I excuse me, may I have
Please
a
go.
chance to
Only 15
respond?
seconds though. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think you need to give me as much time, because firstly there was historical disinformation about the Democratic and Republican Party.
You have your
Then
time.
there was,
15
yes,
seconds
okay,
to-
please let
because I
me
have other
speak.
issues.
May I speak?
Yes, please.
Disinformation about the Democratic and the Republican Party. As an American historian, I hate to inform you that Dinesh D'Souza's theory of American history is absolutely wrong. We know that the Democratic and Republican Party have switched roles. Today's Trump's base is in the Confederacy, the former Confederacy, in the area of the KKK, okay? So do not give me this thing about the Democratic Party being the party of slavery.
Right, that's why-
Excuse me,
that's
do
why-
not interrupt me. Do not interrupt me. And now I get 10 more seconds.
That was
Because
as
you
much
interrupted me.
opportunity
Sorry,
zones.
you
That's
interrupted me.
But
Please
15
give me 10 more seconds.
American community.
Secondly,
5 more seconds.
secondly, we know that the
15 seconds
Democratic
are up,
Party is,
Anisha, come on.
excuse me, Mr. Utsav, I'm speaking. Secondly, we know that the Democratic Party actually is much better for Hindu Americans as a whole, because it is the party of tolerance. We
Thank
are
you, Manisha ji.
not the party of white supremacy and Christian fundamentalism. That's the Republican Party. And most Indian Americans need to know that as a bottom line.
Thank you. Next question is for you. So I'm just trying to keep on time. We're running short. So I'm going to cut it down to a minute and 30 seconds for the response. One of the issues that has come up is DALCA. And DALCA is it is analogous to DACA. And this is the one where kids were born to legal H-1B visa holders. And they go out of status when they turn 21, and they're supposed to self-deport themselves. Now, President Trump has been a president for 4 years, and he has not taken any action on this. What is your view, from Trump perspective for his next 4 years on DALCA? And again, you have a minute and 30 seconds and not 2 minutes, because I'm trying to manage the time. Thank you.
I spent 8 years under President Obama, hoping the elusive tolerance and pro-immigration policies that Manisha ji has been expounding upon endlessly for the last 2 minutes would solidify into some green card for myself. Never happened. So what I am seeing here, whether it is DACA, whether it is green cards, the Democrats are exactly the same as Republicans. Both have not done anything for the American Hindu community. The only difference is that the Republicans talk about Americans getting the preference first. The Democrats talk about illegal citizens who are illegal people, immigrants who are coming into this country, getting the preference first. So the choice is between the devil and the deep sea when it comes to immigration. And I know Manisha ji is going to again expound into a 2 minutes of monologue on this, but I just want to use my time to say that I have been myself a victim of that discrimination. I had to wait 16 years in this country to get a green card, okay? And let me tell you this, she previously mentioned about refugees and Black people and the discrimination they have faced and told me that I am privileged. This is exactly the kind of rhetoric I hear from the leftists. I am not privileged. My family was a refugee. I have faced the same slavery. My ancestors have faced the same slavery that African Americans. I'm not belittling them. I actually am identifying with them. And this is the problem with Manisha ji. Manisha ji is the one who is divisive here.
Thank you.
We're divisive here.
Let me move on. Suresh, you had your hand up and you haven't had much time to talk. So please, respond to this if you have to.
Certainly. So I just wanted to ask Utsav ji a quick question. Have you ever been on an H-1B visa before?
Yes, sir, I have been.
Yes. So I just wanted to go back to your statement of slicing and dicing all these the Indian community into pre-H1, post-H1, green card. I have been, frankly, in all those categories. I grew up in India. I went through H1, L1, became a green card and a citizen. So I think slicing and dicing them is a disservice we are doing to the Hindu community. I think what we should do, perhaps we can use some part of this discussion today to see how we can maybe get behind things that are pro-Hindu, pro-India, and that, frankly, does not have to be a party line discussion.
Thank you. Surajit, my next question, let me just go to the next question, otherwise I'll never get through the questions that I have. So Surajit, for 1 minute and 30 seconds on this, so Vice President Biden actually made a statement that confessional faiths should be taught in the school. And our confessional states are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So you think that when if Vice President were to become President Biden, how is he going to do that? Taking into account the separation of church and state, and what kind of impact would it have on Hindu kids when confessional faiths are being taught in the schools and not the dharmic faiths?
So, Ajayji, I think it has been made clear subsequently after that that his dialogue on that particular topic was more broad-based. It was just more generically that all faiths should be discussed, not taught. I think this was twisted out of context to say that Islam must be taught in schools, right? And that is a deliberate tactic, again, a Bannon typical strategy, that you take one piece of a long dialogue. And this was an open, honest discussion he was having about religion in general. And that's where he said confessional religions. But what he meant was across the board. It was later clarified. But I think this was misinformation has been spreading around in the community, which has been debunked by several fact-checking folks. So I just want to make that clear that the context should be taken into account.
Thank you, Jay. You're on mute, Jay.
Thank you. So I'll give Sureshji the benefit of the doubt that comment was probably taken out of context. However, the actions of Biden are far more telling than just that one comment or whatever the context was. Biden has spoken before very Muslim Brotherhood affiliated organizations such as ISNA and MPAC, which actually hold very Hindu-phobic perspectives, policy perspectives, and they're actually quite embedded. Their affiliates or their surrogates are embedded within the Biden campaign. So, for example, I'm sure Suresh Kumar attended the event on August 15th, where they unveiled their platform for the Indian American community, which, of course, the Hindu American community was supposed to be subsumed within that. I'll give them that credit that they did that. However, there was one gentleman who was missing from the speaking roster who has actually been targeted by left-wing media, and that person is Amit Jani. And he's been targeted for months, actually a year plus. And unfortunately, he was kicked off of that platform and was replaced by Farooq Mitta, who is a board member of MGAGE, the Muslim Political Action Committee's political wing. And so that is more telling of how the Biden camp is going to engage with Hindu American.
Jay, thank you. I got to move on to the next question. And the next question I have is for, let's see, if I don't want to lose track. Jay, next question is actually for you. So this is again an issue that I try to bring up issues that bring up convergence, and so I'm hoping that this is something that will bring up convergence. There has been there was an article yesterday that was published, and actually day for yesterday, and there are other smaller write-ups on this, but this is an emerging trend now that, as you know, that Israel has been targeted by the BDS movement. And the next target of the BDS movement is now India because of Kashmir. And I'm not really worried about India and what happens in India and what stand, because I don't think that the BDS movement will have any impact on India. My question is different. What is the impact that you see of BDS movement, if it were to happen, to the college-going students in America who don't have enough context of what is going on in Kashmir, or the Kashmiri refugees and things, and who have been rendered homeless and all that? And how is if your candidate, or your preferred candidate rather, were to become a president, how would they deal with the BDS movement, uh, targeting, targeting India outwardly, but really inwardly targeting the Hindus who are growing up in second and third generation Hindus in America?
So thank you for that question. I also read that article, and it's written by a friend of mine, a good friend who I've worked with from the Middle East Forum, Cliff Smith. And the BDS movement is, it's not just BDS, it's just BS, if I can be so blunt. And they have been shifting towards targeting India, and because they realize that the U.S.-Israel relationship is just too strong, and the president, and you said my preferred candidate becomes president. He already is president. He's going to remain president for the next 4 years. Now, this issue of targeting Hindus on college campuses is something I've experienced directly as someone as an American-born Hindu who's proud of my heritage. I experienced it directly at the University of Texas at Austin from very left-wing, the nexus between left-wing and Muslim American, Islamist American organizations acting on campuses. And this is going to be a growing trend. Of course, President Trump and his party have absolutely eviscerated the BDS movement and any potential impact it can have, especially when the Abraham Accords and peace-loving and peace deals amongst Arab countries are coming to the forefront. He's delivering on actual peace negotiations. This is going to have a trickle-down effect in how, in the way that Jewish Americans are seen in this country. And I believe that because President Trump has such a great relationship with Prime Minister Modi, who he has, and I attended the event in Gujarat where he absolutely spoke glowingly about the Hindu traditions. He went to Mahatma Gandhi's ashram. And in fact, so if I could just finish like 10, 15 more seconds.
And then Manish, after that, please take 10 seconds.
President Trump has actually walked the walk. He hasn't just talked the talk on respecting Hindu traditions, and that goes all the way down through his campaign team and surrogates. In fact, Eric Trump visited a Hindu temple both in 2016 and in 2020. Laura Trump actually paid respects to Mahatma Gandhi on Gandhi Jayanti, whereas Kamala Harris, and she mispronounces her own name, by the way, Manisha. It's Kamala, not Kamala, the way she pronounces it.
She doesn't say Kamala, she says
Yes,
Kamala.
Absolutely. She is.
And may I respond now? I think
Let's go to
and I would appreciate
Mr.
Mr. Shah, I would appreciate getting equal time.
No, not equal time, because responses are half the time as the original question. So you won't get the equal time. Equal time when your question comes. So Manisha, the ground rules are clear.
Okay, may I respond?
You have 30 seconds.
May I respond?
Please,
We don't need people like Trump. In Hinduism, we respect women. In Hinduism, we don't need people like Trump, who is divisive and disrespectful in every respect. But I will respond to two things. One, the idea that somehow Biden has a China connection. Excuse me, Trump paid $188,000 in taxes to China and $750 to the US. His daughter, Ivanka Trump, has enormous Chinese business connections. The idea that somehow Biden has a China connection is actually laughable. Trump is in Putin's pocket. He's Russia's boy. He's not even an American person. So we know that about that. And so we must be very clear about who respects India and Hinduism and who doesn't. As I must say also that the Biden platform, there's a clear policy paper for Indian Americans that is so pro-India. And I would recommend that everyone go and read that.
Thank you, Manisha.
Biden has the highest, his highest counselors are Hindu Americans, Raj Chetty and Vivek Murthy. Who is there in the Trump team? We do not know.
Manisha, got to move on. Thank you. So the next is international issues. And first of all, I want to ask you guys that we are almost at time. Do you guys have 15 minutes extra to continue? And if you do, we can continue. Otherwise, we'll just do closing statements. Everyone good?
Good.
This is really engaging. So now we move on to the international issues. And Jay, I'm going to cut this to 1 minute response and 30-second, 1 minute answer and 30-second response. Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to shortchange anyone, just in interest of time. And I'll cut down some questions as well so that we can stay in time. Jay, first question is for you. And the question is that many of the fundamentalist Christian senators have asked President Trump to actually use USCIRF as a tool against India and to classify India in the category that is meant to be for worst of the worst offenders as it pertains to religious freedom. And in fairness, a lot of people on the left have done it, but with President Trump, Christian fundamentalists carried more weight. How would President Trump respond to that in coming 4 years? Is he going to succumb to his base, or is he going to have a policy that is neutral towards India or favorable to India, as our Dharma Bhumi, which happens to be majority Hindu?
Thank you so much for that question. It's something that I've been wanting to bring up anyway. So number one, President Trump has actually taken UCIRF's suggestion for many years to give Pakistan the status of CPC, country of particular concern. And he's also cut off funding that the Obama-Biden administration gave tens of billions of dollars to. And that's a fact that Manisha ji can't deny. And also on the issue of USCIRF, just recently, yes, they proclaimed, and I would also say that Indian-American Democrat who was appointed by Pelosi on the council, Anurima Bhargava, actually sided with the majority of USCIRF to declare India a CPC. And of course, the Tibetan Buddhist, who was also appointed by Pelosi, spoke in dissent of that. But also who spoke in dissent were the appointees of President Trump, Gary Bauer and Johnny Moore, of that committee. So that means to say that President Trump is very clear that that India is not a violator of religious freedom or of or a bastion of religious intolerance, as many in his own party. And I would say that we have to take those people on. I'm not saying the Republican Party is perfect in any way, shape, or form. And neither is the Democratic Party. We have to take on the elements of Hindu phobia within both sides. And that is an area of convergence that we as Hindu Americans need to have. But unfortunately, the left, I worry that Joe Biden simply doesn't have the wherewithal to take on those elements. In fact, he's fed them.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. Anyone from the Democratic side would like to respond?
Well, I would like to begin by just saying that bringing up the BDS movement is really inappropriate because they have no intention of including India. An overwhelming majority of the Jewish and Hindu population support Biden, Harris, regardless of BDS. And we should know why they do. They're not stupid. They know where their country's interests lie. I should also point out that as far as the Kashmir issue is concerned, a Biden administration would be far better. My father was the governor of J&K for 8 years. He was also an advisor to Indian prime ministers of all parties for a long time, including Prime Minister Modi, who sent out a very nice tweet when my father passed away in 2016. My father opened Amarnath to Hindu yatris as governor of J&K, but he was a Hindu who believed in tolerance. And that is the Hinduism of the Democratic Party. The idea that this is a nonpartisan issue, I would beg to disagree with. I have seen the Republican Party as an intolerant, white supremacist, fundamentalist Christian party.
Manisha ji, thank you. Let me track who is next. I certainly want to make sure that I go in the right order. So Sureshji, the next question is actually, international issue, second question is for Sureshji actually. So Sureshji, the next question is for you. And because I'm paring down the question, this will probably be the last question on the international issues. The question I have is, what would be Vice President Biden's stance on international terrorism, which disproportionately impacts countries like India, which is our Dharma Bhumi. So, as you know, that President Trump is trying to draw down the troops from Afghanistan, which is likely to impact India. But also, on the other hand, there are things like shutting down the Guantanamo Bay prison and a lot of other things that Democrats have outlined as their positions will also end up impacting the terrorism across the world. So, what is your if Vice President Biden were to become president? What would be his stand on terrorism, and what has he done in past to indicate that he would reduce terrorism or fight terrorism?
So even when he was in the opposition at that time, the Foreign Relations Committee, he had defined this. I think goes back, if I'm not mistaken, 2006 or seven. He did mention that the U.S.-India relationship, by coincidence, in 2020, he used this word, the year, saying that by that year it would be the defining partnership in the whole world, right? And he also specifically mentioned the cross-border terrorism as a specific issue that needs to be addressed. And as vice president, he's been right there with President Obama with respect to fighting. He was in the room when Osama bin Laden was assassinated, right, by US Navy SEALs. Now, this was without the permission of Pakistan. So that is courage. That is real moral courage, where a president and vice president makes the call to go into a country that is an enemy of India in many ways, and to take out a terrorist. Now, on conversely, I believe, Jay, you said you were in Ahmedabad. At least the reports that I have read said that President Trump actually supported ties with Pakistan because of aid, because of help with the Afghan situation. Right now, I've not verified it myself, but there were reports that I've read that this statement was made right in India. So that is a transactional mindset, right? Give me something and I'll give you something back. That's a typical real estate agent's way to look at things, what Trump has been, unfortunately. Leadership, which is inspiring and that has been missing. And I think that's what would really impact India.
Seriously, thank you. So one of the two on the Republican side, if you want to counter.
Absolutely. So he made that statement in India, but he actually visited India, and also the left was busy stoking riots. George Soros and other groups were funding riots in Delhi during President Trump's visit there in religious riots, or they were really, now the Delhi government has determined them to be terrorism, in order to embarrass President Trump during his visit to India. Now, with respect to a transactional relationship, unfortunately, it's Vice President Biden who's been the one who has been transacting business deals, as has been uncovered by his son's laptop. And the fact that the left, in fact, the Intercept, which is a left-leaning,
You got to be serious.
Missing laptop.
I wanted to add something. I wanted to add something.
But
this is the Russian talk. Come on, Jay. You can do better than that.
No, they find it at the top of
Thank you.
desk.
The time is up. So what I'm going to do is go to the closing argument of the discussion. It was very engaging. I really enjoyed listening to both the sides, and I think maybe we should have, when some domestic issues come up or international issues come up, we should get this panel together again. But with that, I want to just give everyone an opportunity to have 2 minutes to have their final final comments. Right. So the order I have here is Jay, then Sureshji, and then Manishaji, and then Utsav. Okay, so please go ahead, Jay. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So one thing that we haven't mentioned in this, but I've mentioned it in other forums that I've been in, is that there was a Hindu candidate on the Democratic side as a presidential candidate, Tulsi Gabbard, and look, the electorate decided that she was not, the person that they wanted, and that's fair. So I don't think just because she's a Hindu, she should have been our president, but her policies and her platform have most certainly been informed by her experience or by her religious perspective, and also her experience as a combat veteran. And she has been far more well received amongst Republicans than she ever has amongst her own ranks. In fact, she had to resign from the DNC as a vice chair because of the just blatant corruption that was rampant throughout her party. And also, she actually got delegates, and unfortunately, she was not allowed to speak at the DNC. So I would actually ask, one of the other panelists from the opposite side to address why she wasn't given an opportunity to speak at the DNC, because if they're not prepared to answer that question, then I don't know what they're doing on a forum like this. Whereas President Trump has been far more respectful of Hindu perspectives, of Hindu thought, and I often get called to provide such analyses to the White House. And I also must say that President Trump's policies are just going to far more benefit Hindus in America. With over 800 temples in America, law and order is a critical issue. Unfortunately, Joe Biden has been bowing to these Maoist Marxist mobs and pledging to defund police. And I don't understand, if we're a community that we want to ensure that our communities are safe, and we are one of the most law-abiding communities in America, how we can support a platform that disrespects police officers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sureshji, 2 minutes.
Certainly. So firstly, I want to thank you, Ajayji, for doing a fantastic job as a moderator, and for the HinduLounge for bringing this very important discussion today. But I just wanted to take a little different note with my closing comments, which is that I wanted to really point out what really is at stake for the Indian American and the Hindu community. So when I talk about Indian American, frankly, I think, because if you go by the normal numbers, about 80–85% are Hindus. So there's a lot of convergence between the two. But as we get busy with our lives, dealing with the virus and all those issues, I think one important question we need to ponder about is that, why did you originally come to this country? Right? What comes to mind normally is opportunity, in terms of work, family, quality of life, all those things normally come in. But I would submit that there's a much more important reason, which is actually being flushed out by this election, which is the freedoms and the amazing democracy that's here. Right now, that was built on the backs of many of the minority there, the Black community, and we actually are reaping the benefits of those. Right? So Trump, by re-electing Trump, we run the risk of undoing all that amazing, great work done by Martin Luther King, John Lewis, and all those folks that we are as a community benefiting from. So my closing statement would be that I think we should pause, take a look at what made us successful, why we came here in the first place, what made us successful, and try to build bridges with those communities instead of calling the language that Trump uses, sons of bitches, rapists, and all those words, which is what a divisive person does. And therefore, I make a request to the community, please take this into consideration, and then you have no choice but to vote for Joe Biden.
Thank you, Sureshji. Manisha-ji?
Mr. Shah, I will let Utsav go before me, and then I'll go in the end.
That's fine. Go ahead, Utsav.
Thank you.
If Utsav is agreeable. We just reversed the order. That's why Utsav was last. Go ahead, Utsav. It doesn't matter.
Well, I guess the rules are made in the debate itself, because people are on their own and they just need to go on. So that's fine. Well, I was not ready for this, but okay. So the main issue here is basically tokenism and hypocrisy. Our opponents here, and Jay has been very rightly, very calmly pointing out some of these hypocritical points. I just wanted to remind our viewers here that of all the people who did not support the raid on Osama bin Laden's hideout in Pakistan, Joe Biden was one of them. He was actually one of those who didn't want the raid to happen, even though later on the president went ahead and do it. So obviously, as a vice president, he got to stay in the room. So really, I mean, it is very interesting to see that the issues that we bring up as real markers of anti-Hindu policymaking, anti-Hindu hatred, anti-Hindu apologism, that is coming out from the Democratic Party as we speak right now, they are usually dismissed as being isolated, as being not mainstream, and as being something that we should be dealing with because we are supposed to be self-confident. On the other hand, the same people go out and make allegations that are right out of the propaganda playbooks. I mean, we are going to dismiss the computers that are showing the dealings of the Biden family with China. But we will go on and on and on about the Russia collusion. So here is a hypocrisy that I want our viewers to understand, make a decision on it. Similarly, I mean, if you want to talk about support for Pakistan, Joe Biden was funding Pakistan when Pakistan was actually funding those same amounts of monies that they were giving from America to support terrorists against India in Afghanistan, against India in Kashmir and in Afghanistan. So the closing statement that I have for viewers to see is the hypocrisy and the tokenism. And I will not close by saying that I do not oppose people in the Republican Party who are anti-Hindu. All I expect from the Democrats who are leaders in the Democratic Party is to do the same for those who are hating Hindus in their party. And if we are going to cover for anti-Hindu folks in the Democratic Party, then I think the audience needs to decide which side has a more genuine point here and a more genuine case.
So thank you. Thank you. Manisha ji?
Thank you, Mr. Shah, for having us today. I will say again that the Democratic Party is the party of tolerance. It's the party where Hindu Americans can feel completely comfortable. It's the reason why somebody like Tulsi Gabbard would even run on a Democratic Party platform. Impossible in the right-wing, Christian fundamentalist, white supremacist Republican Party primaries. I would also say that for India, it is extremely important to have a functional government in the United States, one that is strong, that is taking the economy, the coronavirus, and everything serious, and not an criminally incompetent kleptocrat who has failed in his businesses and is now going to fail our country. This is our country now. We must build a strong democracy in the United States to partner with the largest democracy in the world, in India. The reason why Mahatma Gandhi's grandson believes in the Democratic Party, the reason why an overwhelming majority of Hindu Americans believe in the Democratic Party is because none of us, the so-called scare tactics and race baiting that has been going on about somehow the BLM protesters taking over temples, my God, if somebody is having real weird dreams, because all the temples and all the Sikh temples and Hindu temples that have been attacked have been from right-wing, fundamentalist, Christian, domestic terrorist militias. They're the ones who disrespect us when we go to the stores. They're the ones who make fun of our accents. They're the ones who make fun of our religion. They are not the Democrats. The Democrats are a party of tolerance. They are a party that welcomes everyone. And from every religion. They are the party that is pro-immigrant, not anti-immigrant. Who's cut off all the HB1 visas? It was Trump. The way that they have raked over some of our greatest, people in our community who have achieved so much, like Sundar Pichai of the Google, saying, oh, you are discriminating against us. They are bad for our success. They are bad for our religion. Vote Democrat and vote for seeing an Indian woman, a woman of Indian descent at the highest levels of power in the United States government.
Manisha, thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
That's a closing statement.
Question: why Tulsi Gabbard was not allowed to speak at the Democratic National?
Why didn't she run for the Republican Party nomination then, Jen? And please be careful when you go to the White House. It's a super spreading area.
Not allowed to speak.
See, this is the kind of hypocrisy that we are calling out.
Okay, thank you.
Would you ever run a Hindu? Would they ever run a Hindu?
Hypocrisy we are calling out here.
Would they ever run a person of Indian descent or Hindu?
I want to thank the party because this was the reality we faced in 2020.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I hate to cut off anyone, but
Thank you, Mr. Shah.
I think
Allowed to
Thank you.
the DNC convention.
In any case, Americans got a couple of delegates in.
Anybody who would associate with Steve Bannon?
In
Thank
fact,
you. We are done. We are
Steve,
done.
I ran
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr.
This
Shah.
is the kind of
If you think
hypocrisy we
Steve
need to call
Bannon
out.
is pro-Hindu,
shows
you
the
must be living in a delusional world.
This is the kind of hatred and
It is
hypocrisy
not
we're calling
you're
out.
the hatred and racism and anti-immigrant sentiment is coming from your side. Bye-bye.
The hatred is from one side.
I need to respond. Both you and Jay need
I
to
don't
respond
think
here.
so.
Called out Jay, so he has to respond. Jay, you were not audible. Please, as a final comment, because you are called out by name, please respond. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So I led a Independence Day special on Steve Bannon's podcast, which anybody can watch. And in fact, one of the key things that we discussed was one of President Trump's successes has been the Quad. India, Japan, Australia, and also his Indo-Pacific strategy, which coincides with India's or Hindu civilization's Ayodhya Belt and Road Initiative, where the Ramayana is the string that ties in all of the Indo-Pacific and also the South China, all the way to the South China Sea. And President Trump recognizes that. President Trump recognizes Taiwan. President Trump recognizes the importance of Indonesia now, which, of course, they may be the majority Muslim country, but they are far more tolerant than any of these Islamists that are operating within
So that has to be the final word now. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you and namaste. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your joining. This will be available for rebroadcast. It was already simulcast on multiple platforms. So most of our viewers usually join on Facebook. We have 4 channels on Facebook or on YouTube and Periscope or Twitter. And so this will be there and we'll widely publicize this. This was a great conversation. Intense, but I think a lot of good Hindu issues got addressed. So I want to thank all of you. Thanks again and namaste.
I would like to thank the opponents on as well, because it was a good conversation. So thank you so much for engaging. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.